Hello, Lydia.
Hi, Steve. Good to see you.
Nice to see you again. You know, I have the fondest memories of Bratislava, of that polyglot gathering. That was a magic place. It really was. And you did a great job there.
Oh, thank you. I'm so glad you're saying that. I also have very good memories of those times when all the polyglots and language lovers gathered here in Bratislava. And
Yeah. No,
yeah, it's
it
really
was
cool.
lovely. It was lovely.
Yeah.
Now, perhaps for my viewers, you can explain what you do. So it's language coaching. I see that in your name in Slovakian, in your, is that on your email or something? So what exactly, can you explain what that is?
Right. So what I do, I don't call it language coaching. I call it language mentoring.
Mentoring,
And
sorry, mentoring it was, yes, sorry.
yeah. So basically what I do is I help people learn languages which I don't even speak. This is I guess the biggest difference. Because I believe in order to learn a language, you need to know how to approach it, and it doesn't really matter which language it is so much. And you need a lot of motivation and some systems, some habits to do it. So I basically help people with that. I give them the know-how on how to learn a language, either from scratch or when they're on an intermediate level, and then I actually help them achieve it and to do it long enough to actually see results.
Now, do you do this face-to-face? Do you do it via the internet? How do you do it?
No, it's all online, and we are basically helping clients from all over the world, and also in Slovakia, Czech Republic, and Slovakia. So we have two parts of the company,
right?
And I don't do it in person. I have a team of 10 people who are helping me run these courses now.
And how long have you been doing this?
We've been doing it for 4 years now. Yeah, we celebrated our 4th birthday.
And so do you then deal with individual learners, or do you provide help to the human resources department of a company, or how does it work?
Yeah, so we only serve individual clients right now. So whenever someone wants to learn a language, they don't really know how to do it. Maybe they tried it in many different ways, but they don't feel like they have a system in place, and they don't enjoy language learning. They don't see the results most of all. Then they watch my know-how, which I put into a video course, and they can follow the simple procedure which I describe in my video course, where I explain how to do everything, how to set up a system. And then for some people, we have some courses for 50 people where everybody follows their own learning plan, but we are together in a group, an online group, and we help each other on this way. We provide the incentive to do individual steps, and everybody follows that at their own pace, in their own time.
So what percentage of your market is in Slovakia, Czech Republic, and elsewhere?
Right now, it's a bigger chunk of the market, because all my team are basically Czechs and Slovaks. So we also focus on this market much more.
Right.
So it's about, I would say 1/3 maybe right now is the international market, and 2/3 is the Slovak one.
And I presume, so, and of course, Slovakia, Czech Republic are right there in the middle of Europe. So in addition to English, I guess German, French, I mean, all languages, Russian, are important to where you're located in the middle of
Europe. You actually named almost all of them, the most popular ones. We also have Spanish and Italian on the list of most popular languages. But everybody's very motivated to learn languages here, for sure.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's the difference between, say, Slovakia and say North America, where you have to look very hard to find people speaking another language. I mean, Quebec, they speak French, lots of Spanish speakers in the US, but it's predominantly English. And Japan is the same way. I mean, all these countries where you have a lot of speakers of their own language, maybe they're less motivated. What sort of age group do you deal with?
All age groups, basically. We in Slovakia, this is interesting. We have most people who are interested in our courses are basically in my age. Let's say people between after their university studies, or after leaving school, maybe between 25 and 40, let's say. And a big group is actually moms who are on maternity leave with their children, because they cannot attend any courses, and they feel really motivated to work on their language skills because they know they will be looking for a job soon.
So is it is this learning then more related to job opportunities, improving one's, credentials, or so it's not so much a cultural thing?
Here in Slovakia, it's more related to your goals and your opportunities in life, because people realize that if they don't speak any foreign language, they cannot do much, really. I mean, there's 5 million Slovaks in the world. If you don't speak any other language, you go south, north, east, west, and no one understands you, right?
Right.
So definitely, it's the will, it's the interest in communicating with other people, but also increasing your job opportunities for sure.
All right. And are these people typically, and this gets into a subject I like to bring up, is nowadays, of course, schools, I don't know what's happening in Slovakia, but in many places, schools are closed down.
They are, yes.
So now people are starting to open up, but what I see is they're opening up for children. They're not so much opening up for older people, adults.
Yes.
And I mean, eventually they will open up, but at the present time, they're not. So do you think that and of course we've seen this increase in online instruction, or in your case online mentoring, perhaps related to online instruction? Do you think the world of language, because even though we're both involved in sort of online language learning, the overwhelming majority of people learn in traditional schools.
Yes.
So do you think there will be a change when we come out of COVID?
I think the change is already happening, actually. We've seen a huge increase in the demand for our courses. The moment that the Corona lockdown started in Slovakia, it was like 3 times the demand that we normally see. So people were definitely looking for new opportunities, how to improve their languages. I think that even when language schools do open up, I think many people will still worry to go there and meet in a group of people. So they will still prefer to look for other ways. So I believe that the COVID situation will definitely influence how people look at language learning and what ways they follow.
Right. And of course, there's been, even before COVID, there was a big increase in the number of online tutors. It's kind of been a gradually growing thing.
Right.
I mean, there are a lot of independent people. There are, obviously, Italki has a large group of teachers, but also independent language teachers who set up and see their business grow. Have you seen this? Have you seen an increase in the number of online language tutors?
Yeah, I mean, not in person. I don't work with these people in any way, but yeah, I notice it as a user on italki and similar websites which are being created now, that more people are interested in teaching online, and also more people are now open to the possibility of having a conversation online with someone. Because I think this also has to do with the fact that more and more people, let's say at my age, people, I'm 31, people my age are not afraid to call someone online, because it's something we do all the time, right? And so I think that fewer and fewer people worry about these technical issues,
right.
and that's why they're open to call their friends, have a language lesson, have a consultation with someone online. So I think with time, naturally, more and more people who are now getting to older age, I don't know how to put it, they will not worry about it because they have already quite a lot of experience, right? Whereas 10 years ago, it would be a normal thing for 20-year-olds, but maybe not so normal for older people.
And how do you think online instruction, and of course this gets to some of your advice to people on how to learn languages, so what's the role of the sort of online or remote language learning versus classroom language learning?
So I think the biggest difference is in the learner's expectations on how the learning should happen. I think that if people go to traditional language classes, they expect the teacher to teach them, and they think that this is what they pay for, right? They want an expert who has the knowledge, the information, the pieces of the language, and the teacher gives the knowledge to the students, right? Whereas I think the biggest difference, and you see it in the community of polyglots yourself, I believe, is that we don't expect anyone to teach us, right? We look for ways how we can learn the stuff, how we can spend time with the language. We come up with creative ways how to read something or listen to something. And once we find something that we like, we spend a lot of time with it, and ta-da, a few months later you speak the language. So I think
Well,
this is the
not
big
quite, not necessarily that quickly, but okay.
right.
Right.
I mean, if if someone applies themselves, I believe every day for like an hour, that they can definitely see a huge improvement
Oh,
within months.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So I think that this is the interesting change for me in this whole COVID situation, and how more and more people are starting to look for online resources and online language learning, because I think they will understand better that they need to actually do the work. They will not look for a teacher where they just come, they show up for the lesson, and the teacher does the job. They realize that they actually need to do the learning, and I think this
Right.
can improve their results a lot.
I mean, I certainly find that if I'm reading something in a language that I'm learning and I'm curious about the grammar, then there are lots of resources. I can look it up. If I want to look up Arab verbs, if I want to look up, I mean, even right now I'm learning Arabic and Persian and Turkish, which are less, studied than other languages. And yet there's an abundance of resources. When I was doing Romanian, I downloaded this phenomenal grammar PDF that's free. And it's full of examples, and so when you're curious, there's all kinds of resources. As you say, the teacher doesn't need to be the expert who knows the language and is going to give you the secret to the language.
Yeah.
However, what I see, here in Canada, of course, now the schools are shut down, so teachers are trying to teach online, and the first sort of instinct of the traditional teacher is to take what they do in the classroom and simply make it available online. So they use Zoom, or they use whatever they use, so that they take the classroom and put it online. Do you think that will be the model going forward, or do you think they'll maybe have to change what they do?
I'm sure they will. And actually today I had a call with a friend who is an online tutor, and she says that she noticed that people are already changing the way they teach languages, because you cannot hold the attention of people in an online session in the same way you do it in a classroom. You cannot interact with them in the same way. So they are now looking for ways how to get the attention of their students. And I think if someone decides to stay exactly with the traditional way, they will soon find out that they are not competitive, because there will be so many other people teaching that students will prefer interaction, other types of interaction with the teacher. So I don't think this will just move online.
Okay, now the problem is, so if you're in a classroom, you have 25 often children, or even, I guess, adult language classes tend to be smaller than that.
Yeah.
And the people always say to me, for example, with Link, so how would you use Link in a classroom? Because with Link, it's just you listen and read, and if you do interact with the tutor, it's one-on-one. But in a classroom, the teacher has 20 or so. And so the problem for the teacher always becomes, what can I do to keep them busy? And so they create activities in the classroom in order to keep people busy, regardless whether that's the most effective way to teach or not.
Yes.
So then what's going to happen? Are language teachers going to have more smaller individual classes, but fewer of them? Or how is this going to develop, in your opinion?
Yeah, so I've given this quite a lot of thought, and I can totally imagine that that, for example, Link is used in classroom. I can absolutely imagine that someone, the students come, and one of them is reading a book, another one is playing a computer game, another one is working with a language app. There are so many ways to learn a language, right? And everybody picks something else. I believe that.
But this is in a real classroom. This is what you're saying could be the situation. Once we have brick and mortar schools again, that the students will be allowed to do not quite what they want, but a variety of different activities on their own in the classroom.
Yeah, and I'm talking about a hypothetical classroom, obviously, maybe way in the future, but this is what I can totally imagine working. I think that the goal of the teacher would not be to make sure that that whatever the students do in the class, that's the learning that happens, or the majority of the learning, but they would make sure that they would use some part of the lesson to talk to the students about what they have just read, or what they have just done.
Right.
And maybe students could do all of these activities at home, and then they would come to the lesson only to discuss something. So it would be basically just conversation lessons and grammar clarification, let's say.
Right.
I believe this is the biggest input where a teacher can help their students, right?
I agree with you 100%. And if the student is curious about some point of grammar and asks the teacher why this, and the teacher explains it, that has a greater likelihood of actually staying in the brain of the learner. If, on the other hand, the teacher says, today we're going to learn the subjunctive,
Exactly.
that has very little impact. I'm not ready for
Yeah.
the subjunctive. I don't want the subjunctive.
Yeah, because the student's brain is like the subjunctive. What do I need it for, right? Like, why should I care?
Right.
So maybe the next step would even be that the student comes and asks, tell me, what is this quiero que tengas, you know, or something like the form of the subjunctive, let's say. And the teacher says, you know what, let me find a website for you where this is explained. Why don't you read it? And if you have any questions, you know, come to me and ask me. And I believe that in this way, the teacher could just be the guide who basically guides the students to figure out the answers. Because as you said, there are resources for any language out there online. So all you need to do is just be curious and then look for the answers in the materials.
Right. And you know, you mentioned, okay, the subjunctive, it could be case endings in Slavic languages or verbs of motion, which I still have trouble with. But the teacher could also encourage people in the classroom to give examples, because I'm a big believer in examples rather than explanations. And so if you had the students in the class, each one come up with an example of the instrumental case in Russian or something like that. So I think that kind of focusing on examples in the classroom would also be effective in a classroom. But if we get back to online instruction then, so how do you see online instruction? How is it going to be? Online instruction typically is one-on-one or not necessarily?
Yeah, mostly it happens like that. I know that now teachers are coming up with new ways because they're forced, especially teachers from public schools. They have to spend time with the children, so they usually use Zoom calls or something. I don't know how these lessons go or how, you know, what it looks like. So I cannot say what it will be like. But I truly believe that the Corona situation, what it can change is that it will help people realize that most of the learning should happen outside of the class. So now teachers are basically forced to give students more homework because they cannot spend as much time with them in the lesson.
Right.
And I think once that students realize, well, I can actually read this text by myself. I can look up the words which are new. We don't have to do it all together, 20 students. Maybe it will take me less time than it would take us in the classroom, and I can spend more time doing something else. I think that this may be quite eye-opening for many students as well as teachers, because I really believe that the time spent with the teacher should not be the only time that a person learns.
Well, of course. And the teacher shouldn't decide what the learner is going to read or listen to.
Exactly. Yeah. So ideally, what it could bring is the teacher says, okay, guys, so your homework is to read, you know, either the text in the textbook or a similar text of your choice.
Right.
But then, of course, we get to the problem of testing. I mean, the teachers need to give grades, and I think this is a sore point.
Right. Well, I think, and even before that, I think the teacher could say, here's a range of material that you can choose from.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be open-ended, you know, so that there might be some restriction on what they can use.
Of course.
But yeah, testing is a big issue, and I always raise of course, the situation, say, in Canada or North America, very different from Slovakia. I think people are more motivated to learn languages in Europe generally than here. However, you have the situation that when I went to school, we had French every day. We had it from grade 2, and no one could speak the language.
Yeah.
And yet we had tests. I had tests all the time. I did well in the tests. And by the age of 16, I couldn't speak French. Yeah. And so students can do quite well in tests and still not be able to speak and not understand very well. And the main reason is because they haven't read or listened very much. In other words, they haven't consumed very much of the language.
Yes.
And so the question is, you know, we can test. Like I have a tremendous aversion to listening comprehension questions. Like, I believe that whatever I understand, that's my business. If I understand it wrong, that's my business. I understood only 50%, that's my business. The most important thing is that I read it and I listened to it, so that all of that language was kind of entering my brain. Don't bother me with these comprehension questions.
Yeah, that's
right. I just have a tremendous aversion to all form of testing. I believe that if we could, at LINC, we measure activity, essentially. How many words have you read? How many words have you looked up? How many hours have you listened? And the assumption is that if you maintain a certain level of activity, you will improve.
Yes, that's exactly my system.
And if you are put in a situation where you need the language, or if you have an opportunity to use the language, you'll improve very quickly, as long as you have put all of that, active effort into listening and reading and speaking and writing. So but is it possible that schools could persuade the parents and the school administrators that all we need to measure is how active these students are with the language, and not necessarily whether they get the subjunctive right? Because you know very well that you can get the subjunctive or any grammar issue, you can get it right one day and get it wrong the next day.
Exactly.
Get it wrong.
I actually think that the reason why this happens is because of testing. Because if you want to test someone, what happens is the teacher says, okay, kids, tomorrow we have a test in the subjunctive, right? So the kids learn a few, I don't know, definitions or something, and they all cram it into their short-term memory, right? But because they know they will be tested on it, and they need to know these words on a certain date.
Right.
Whereas I think what actually happens is, whether with vocabulary or grammar, what you do is you assimilate stuff step by step. And let's say I heard a word 3 times. The question is, do I know it or do I not know it? In a test, someone wants to tell me exactly, you know this word or you don't know this word, but maybe I know it passively now. And if I hear it 2 or 3 more times and then I use it once in a conversation, I will know it perfectly well. So this is what I see as the biggest problem with testing, that it tries to catch a certain level of your knowledge on a certain point, whereas it's a process of development. Right.
Exactly. And how you do on the test now is not necessarily a good predictor of how well you will learn the language. And if that test discourages you, in fact, it might have a very negative effect on your possibility of eventually learning that language.
And let alone, the stress of being tested. Yeah. Whenever anyone wants to test me, like, okay, Lýdia, so you speak these languages, let me test you in French or whatever. I get so stressed up that I feel like a total beginner, But if I meet someone, if I'm on holiday and I meet someone and they're nice and they're not testing my French, we're just speaking, I feel comfortable and I can use it fluently. So I believe that if people base their self-assessment only on the results of a test where they were under stress, I believe they don't really have a clear picture of their level.
And I think the tests are, there was the example, for example, in the Canadian government, you get a bonus for being bilingual. In order to get that bonus, you have to pass a test. And so if on your French you get the subjunctive wrong, they may not give you your bonus. And yet it's very possible that someone who can get the subjunctive wrong can sit in a meeting, let's say in French, and not understand what's going on and not be able to communicate, whereas someone else who gets the subjunctive wrong is fully able to participate in the meeting, understands what's going on, and is able to explain whatever he or she has to say. So it's a very arbitrary, and of course, that's the only way it could be, because the test has to find something to mark you down on, right?
Yeah, and this is exactly the problem. So when you have a school that wants to, or a language school that wants to give a certificate, like you have passed this and you are on this level, what can they test other than the material that they have covered? Right. So I believe this is the problem with this is why they're still using textbooks, because they want to have a set of words which have been learned or taught in the lessons, and they test you on those words, and then everybody gets an A, and people feel they don't really speak the language because they haven't really put in the work.
Right. I have the feeling that we could go on for a long time discussing this subject.
I guess so, yeah.
I think it's great what you're doing. I don't know when we'll have another polyglot meeting. We got to wait to sort of get to the other side of this COVID thing. But thank you for coming to visit. Sounds very interesting. We'll leave a link to your site in the description box.
Thank you very much.
And I look forward to the next time when we can meet face to face.
I hope it's soon. Okay, see you then.
See you. Bye-bye.
Bye.